I am humbled and honored again this evening to have this opportunity to share with you some perspective on the notion of divine presence and intellectual illumination. As I begin this presentation this evening, let me remind you of some important perspective of our holy faith, our tariqah. Before I go into that, I want to say the Ginam that was recited is truly in tune today with the subject that I'm presenting. And I will be coming back to that particular parts of Ginam down the road. But I'd like to add a footnote to that and simply to say, Ginams are full of wisdom. Ginan is spiritual wisdom. Ginan is the kind of knowledge that leads the soul into liberation and salvation. Ginan brings illumination to the intellect and hence to the soul. Ginan is our most beloved, precious literature. Do not forget that our brothers and sisters in other parts of the world, though they may not have Ginan, we have them because we predominantly come from the subcontinent where Ginans were composed, but our brothers and sisters, and in our tariqah, we have Qasidas, we have Masnavis, we have Mankabats, and they also reflect the wisdom, the spiritual essence, the belief, the love, the devotion, and the expression that our holy Ginans have. It is such an incredible, amazing renderings, our corpus of devotional literature, that it is truly in the spirit of pluralism and in the spirit of being all-encompassing to all beings that our tariqah reflects. More of that, if not today, sometime in the near future, when we have subjects on Ginan, and inshallah with Mola's blessings, I fully intend to produce a lecture or two or more on the concept and notions of Ginans. So for this evening, let me re-emphasize, excuse me, let me re-emphasize some particularity of our perspective in Islam. You probably remember and you have heard Maulana Hazrat Imam, our beloved Imam, in some of the farmans. He says, the Shia Imami Ismaili Islam. Look at these words. Shia Imami Ismaili Islam. These are the words of the Imam. And you must reflect on these composite words because they indeed point to something very particular about our tariqah in Islam. Having said that, you will also recall the fact that on many places our beloved Imam has indicated to us, as other Imams in the past, that the Ismaili tariqah is very different than others. In fact, we are very different than others, and I refer to that in terms of our practice of the faith. Our practice of the faith is very different than other practices, to this degree that in November 18, 1978, our beloved Imam said, and I quote, this is in Edmonton, our beloved Imam said, and I quote, the Shia Ismaili tariqah is an esoteric tariqah. Exoteric means, in simple words, that which is visible that which everyone can grasp, that which has no internal hidden meaning. The esoteric means that which has an internal meaning that is explained by the Imam to those who seek it, unquote. So this is Edmonton, November 18th, 1978. It's important for all of us to always remember this, because when the Imam says that it is he who explains the esoteric to the Jamaat, it is he who indicates that path to the Jamaat. And in that, there is a very specific message. And you've seen how this Farman begins, because in this Farman, Maulana Hazrat Imam says, the Shia Ismaili Tariqa. And immediately he qualifies it to say it is an esoteric Tariqa. So two questions we must always ask, especially and most particularly for the purpose of our spiritual enlightenment and for the purpose of making sure that we remain in Sirat al-Mustaqim. And the first question is, when it comes to Sirat al-Mustaqim, when it comes about understanding and knowing and interpreting our faith, the first question is the information, is that knowledge from the source which the Imam says that he is guiding us and indicating us? And the second question is, if that is in relation to my soul, which indeed it is, then you must ask yourself, when I seek information related to the salvation of my soul, that information, that knowledge, that guidance, also from the Imam or the Peers or any authorized source that the Imam has given. Because without that, it would make no sense to say the Shia Ismaili Tariqa. So bear that in mind, because again, sometime in the near future, we may expand on this concept. And it's a very important area to ensure that we do expand on, so that we are in a position to always remain on the path of that Sirat al-Mustaqim. In relation to this, I wish to remind you the notion of the Shariat, the Tariqat, and the Haqiqat. Now, I have received many requests to expand this topic, that beyond what is normally always said, what is the Shariat, what is the Tariqah, and what is the Haqiqat, and what is the Marifat. And I will do so very shortly, as I am adding certain information to this concept. But for tonight, simply to remind you the holy teachings in the Pandiyati Jawan Mardi, the holy teachings given to us by Imam Shah Mustansir Billah alayhi salam, where he says that the real believer, the mu'min, is one who from the observances, the rules of the Shariat, arrives at the following, the rules of the Tariqat, and from the Tariqat to the Haqiqat, which is the real inner meaning, the batin of the Shariat. So simply put, the Imam says that the true believer, the real believer, this word, by the way, real believer, has a very important connotation from the point of view of religious practice. And the real believer, the mu'min, understands the meaning of the Sharia that takes him through the Tariqat into the Haqiqat. And the Imam says the Sharia is compared to a candle, the Tariqat is to the path, and the Haqiqat is to the destination, the manzil. The Holy Imam says one must one must strive, very important word, isn't just like walking, but you must strive. He says that one must strive to walk along the correct path, lit by the candle, and reach the abode, khana, of hakikat. Now the correct path, underline that in your mind. It means walk on the path of Sirat al-Mustaqim. Then our beloved Imam says, the foundation of hakikat is to recognize the Imam. He goes further to say, the purpose of everything is its inner meaning, the batin, which forms its real substance and is the essence, and it is in its essence and sweetness. Then the Imam concludes here and says, therefore, and listen to this carefully, and therefore he says, the ultimate purpose of the Sharia introduced by the Prophet was its inner meaning, the batin, which was rather the hakikat, that is the recognition of the Imam of the time. Now this last part, the conclusion, is enormously important because our beloved Imam says the ultimate purpose of the Sharia. The point why I'm underlining that is because sometimes people get stuck in the Sharia. And it's okay for those who are at that level. But the idea is not to get stuck at the hakikat. The idea, not to get stuck at the Sharia. The idea is to go beyond the Sharia, through the tariqat, reach the hakikat, which is the recognition of the Imam of the time, and from the platform of the hakikat to reach marifat. I shall have more to say about it as we move along, but simply to bring to your notice that though that was said by Imam Shah Mustanfir alayhi salam, our 26th peer in the book of the Farman that the Imam wrote as our 26th peer, Pandiyati Jawan Mardi, our beloved 49th Imam, on January 29, 1995, in Moscow, in Russia, he says, and I quote, and please make the parallel of it, the Imam says, for all murids of the Imam, whether they are from Central Asia, from India, from Pakistan, from the Western world, the fundamental principle is the recognition of the Imam of the time. I repeat that last sentence. The fundamental principle is the recognition of the Imam of the time. Then listen. The Holy Imam says, it is he who interprets the faith. It is he who guides the Jamaat in the interpretation of its faith at any time during its lifetime. Unquote. So I think you have a clear understanding of where things lies when it comes to these four levels of understanding, essentially the Sharia, the Tariqat, the Haqiqat, and the Marifat, which I shall have to say something of it later. Now there are mystical interpretation of these stages by people like Ibn Arabi, which is very interesting to study and to know, and others, and I shall have an opportunity when I address this topic in the very near future in greater detail. But simply to conclude this particular part, because it sets a foundation, the foundation related to my presentation tonight about divine presence and intellectual illumination. And in order to set that foundation firmly, let me take the meaning of the Shariat, the Tariqat, the Haqiqat in a slightly different way, related to what our beloved Imam just said in the Holy Pandiya. So in a sense, when you speak about the Shariat, we are speaking about everything that is Zahir, mean it's the external form. You heard the Holy Farman in Edmonton, where Maulana Hazar Imam said, the Zahir, it is the external form. When nothing is hidden, there is no internal meaning. And if there is no internal meaning, that means there is no internal meaning. It is what it is. You take it as it comes to you. And then there is the tariqat, which is a mixture of the zahir and the batin. And when there is a mixture of the zahir and the batin, it is intended to allow the follower of the tariqah to improve the inner self through various forms of spiritual practices. Which means that in Islam, generally speaking, when you think about those spiritual practices, people refer to them as Sufism. And people say that is the mystical part in Islam, or the mystical meaning or interpretation of Islam, based on the very many Sufi paths that have existed in history, and as many Sufi paths that exist today. Having said that, Hazrat Imam Sultan Muhammad Shah alayhi salam, our beloved 48 Imam, has said that Ismailism, rather Sufism I should say, is very close. I repeat this, Sufism is very close to Ismailism, but Ismailism has got much further. Much further. And that is what makes us different than other tariqahs in Islam. At the same time, in the context of the tariqah, there is the open ground of where people debate intellectually, analytically, where there is analysis, where there is the process of reasoning that comes into play in the forms of arguments, discussions, perhaps even polemics, and so on. In other words, that ground is open there, that allows the flowering of the human intelligence and the human intellect in terms of discovery of meanings and moving further into the path and so on. But once you cross the bridge of the tariqat into the hakikat, it's a totally different scenario, because in the hakikat, this is the stage of mysticism, the understanding of reality. It is the hakikat in a very simple term, which means the truth. But I'll speak about it in a second. And that is the batin. So when you hear the word hakikat, batin. And what did the Holy Imam say about the batin? It is the Imam who shows us the path into the batin and the meaning of that batin. That is the fundamental difference. And when the Imam shows us that path, and the Imam says, this is the path, this is what this means, then I don't think you and I can suddenly start debating about it and arguing about it, because it's a stage of faith. Let me explain that a little further. Well, because the batin is a state of mysticism, or the, if you like, the hakikat is a state of mysticism. What does mysticism mean? Mysticism, from the Greek mystes, it means one who has been initiated into the mystical path and sworn to secrecy. I hope you can follow this. Mysticism, by definition, from the Greek mystes, says It's one who has been admitted, initiated, brought in by a certain process and procedure into a mystical path. And when the individual is brought in the mystical path, he or she is sworn to secrecy. That's why it's called the mystical path. In other words, mystical secrets are never ever revealed just simply for the sake of it. It doesn't happen. That is perhaps, amongst other reasons, why mysticism is so difficult. Why walking into the esoteric is not that easy. Unfortunately, sometimes there is this misunderstanding, and I've got to mention that to you, that in matters that relate to mystical and esoteric knowledge, there is no such thing as democratization of knowledge, if you like. Meaning, this isn't like you pick up a novel or pick up a newspaper or pick up some form of literature and you think simply by reading it, you can get the mystical experience and interpretation and meaning of it. It doesn't happen that way. It's no different than when you study a technical subject in the arts or the sciences or in other areas of knowledge. Let us assume, for sake of being complicated here, let us assume that you take a branch of knowledge that is highly mathematical. Let us say a branch of knowledge like particle physics or quantum mechanics. It's highly mathematical. You can't expect to understand these branches of science simply by the fact that you hold a book in your hand and you think that you can really get through it in any which way, like a novel or a newspaper. No. You need training. And in the case of these branches, you need many years of training. And when you have mastered the components required to understand these fields, you will then begin to understand what these fields are all about. And then you will also understand how much more there is to know in this field because we know so little. In the same way with mystical, esoteric knowledge, in the case of our tariqah, only the Imam can give us the meaning. And therefore, I seriously say to you, and I strongly underline, when it comes to esoteric knowledge about Ismaili tariqah, ask yourself always the question, is this from the Imam? Remember, we are living in an age of information, disinformation, misinformation, and there is a hodgepodge of all of this. And the internet, in fact, is not actually at this stage of the development of what the internet is necessarily the most accurate source of information. If anything, it is in many instances the opposite. And there is a specific procedure related to the way in which one acquires knowledge, whether it's knowledge of the material world or of the spiritual world. That again is a subject in itself, and I'll be happy to address it down the road. I have it in my list. Many people have asked for it. So having given you something about the meaning of mysticism and the word mystique or mystes from the Greek, what then is the meaning of the word hakikat? Because that is the stage where Ismaili faith strongly emphasizes what it should be. And in order to do that, let me give you one more example. It's an example that I've given earlier on before into one of my talks. because it reflects the word hakikat and its plural hakaik. So that example is from the teachings of our beloved Imam, our beloved fifth Imam, Imam Jafar Sadiq alayhi salam. And our beloved Imam says that if you think about the book of God, the Quran, the book of God contains four things, the Imam says. The Imam says the book of God contains ibara, contains ishara, contains latayif, and contains hakaik, which is the plural of the word hakikat. What does that mean? So the first word ibara, it is the literal expression of the Quran. You open the book, you read verses of the Quran or the various chapters or surahs, and you take the literal meaning. And that meaning is for the common people. That is not ibara. That is the announced expression, the literal meaning. You are not going beyond that. It says that, that is what it means. And that's the end of the meaning, and insofar as the reader is concerned. Then you have ishara, the allusion. And that is for the elite, the kawas. The common people are known as awam. This is the kawas, meaning the intellectual elite. When the Quran speaks about the sun and the moon and the heavens and the earth, and it speaks about the light that comes from these various bodies, the intellectual elite will want to know what is the inner meaning. What's inside? What else does it mean? Why does it say this and why does it say that? It's a process of analysis, of argument, of debate, and so on. That is the second level. So there is no satisfaction at the literal level. You want to go further than the literal level. The third level, that is known as latayif. And that third level, it's the hidden meaning. So now you can see the meaning is hidden. It's not apparent. At least not apparent to everyone. But it's the hidden meaning related to the supra-sensible world. What does that mean? There is the physical world and there is the world beyond the physical. So at the physical, during the physical level, at the physical world, you have the literal expression, you have the ibara, and you have the ishara, the allusion. But the meaning that comes from the world beyond the physical is known as the supra-sensible world, and that meaning is made apparent through mystical experiences to those groups of people that in the mystical realm are known as the friends of God, or we say saints, or the word awliya. So basically, people who are at that level will give you a totally different meaning, the hidden meaning. And individuals like that, one of them, for example, is Jalaluddin Rumi. Now let me say one thing to you. Although Jalaluddin Rumi is probably one of the widest read poet, for many people he's a poet, he's much more than that in the Western world, and there have been hundreds of interpretations of his work in the Western world, amazingly so, that many people have made many forms of attempt about it. But you know what mystic says? If you compare what Rumi has said in a mystical sense It is no, what you find in the Western world is no more than if a drop has been mixed into the ocean. So the depth of understanding the inner meaning is yet to come, if at all it comes into the Western world. But it is not something you can take it for granted, because this is the hidden meaning related to the world beyond the physical, the suprasensible world, the world beyond the sensibilities of the human being, means the world beyond the physical, meaning the world of the soul. What is beyond the physical is a reflection of the soul. So where is that meaning? And that meaning is given, as I said, to individuals like Rumi, Ibn Arabi, and other mystics, Fariduddin Attar, and there are, it's not like there is a whole pool of them, but there is a handful of them that reflects that kind of specific meaning. But then there is, the Holy Imam says, there is the Haqa'iq, which is the plural of Haqiqat. That is the spiritual truths. And this word, spiritual truth, has to be understood in a very terse manner. It's a capital S with a capital T. And it is the Haqiqat. That is, that meaning that is given and revealed to the prophets, the Anbiya. And obviously, you understand this because at the level of the prophets, it's not like everybody can reach that meaning, but it is the prophets who then give explanation of the revelation at that stage. So what then is the Haqiqat? Let's come to that point because we have a lot to cover tonight. The Haqiqat, if I may define it for you in this manner to say, the Haqiqat means the inner reality, the reality inside. Like our beloved Imam says, it is the hidden meaning. It is the esoteric truth. The believer is made to see things as they truly exist. You know what that means, right? If something is made to be seen as it truly exists, then really there is no debate about it. Now remember, there's nothing wrong with debate at the level of the Shariat and Tariqat. But at the level of Haqiqat, once that truth is revealed, then what is there to debate? So let me take one step back. What was the purpose of debate? What is the purpose of intellectual exchange? What is the purpose of analysis and reasoning? What is the purpose of any kind of cogitation, of intellectual activity, and the search into those processes? What was the purpose? The purpose is we want to find the truth. What's the purpose of scientific experimentation, observation, repetition, results, its mathematical codification, and so on? What's the purpose of that? To seek to find the truth. We are looking for the truth. It doesn't matter which way you take it. The bottom line is going to be, what is the truth? That's what we are arguing for. That's what we are discussing for. That's what we are researching for. All of that happens at the level of the Shariat and the Tariqat. When you reach the level of the Haqiqat, which only the Imam can take us, this is in our Tariqat. Only the Imam can take us to the level of the Haqiqat. Then the Imam tells us and reveals the inner reality, the esoteric truth. As I said, the believer is made to see things as they are. It is, if you like, the divine reality. It is the path of truth. It is the divine truth, al-haq, the divine truth. And this divine truth is manifested to humanity. And I will come back to that shortly, what that means. Also, it is what the Prophet brings to humanity, at least Holy Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam brought this hakikat to humanity. And that hakikat was revealed to him in the night of Laylatul Qadr and in the 23 years that followed until the final message of his prophethood and prophecy, where he was told to reveal to humanity what he was entrusted with. And you know what that was? That was the revelation that he was made to tell humanity. And you have to think here, how did the Holy Prophet have access to humanity at that time, 1500 years ago? There was no internet, there was no telecommunication of any kind that allowed that kind of message to be broadcasted to humanity. Yet, the command in the Quran is very clear. O Prophet, declare to humanity this truth, this hakikat. So we shall come back to that because it forms part of this notion of divine presence. So for now, I want to bring a little more meat to the notion of hakikat, because I think you need to understand what more our beloved Imams have said. So if you look at, for example, the teachings and the holy firmans of Imam Sultan Muhammad Shah alayhi salam, the Imam Sultan Muhammad Shah says, what is the difference between the Shariat and the Hakikat? The Imam himself is posing the question. And the Imam says, they are two different things altogether. He says, one prefers the book, the fast, and prayer. The other one yearns for freedom. The two worlds apart, the two worlds are apart. They shall never come together. Then the Imam continues and he says, how can the ignorant one ever be happy? He cannot grasp the hakikat. He does not want the hakikat. The ignorant one lets go of the hakikat. But the one who is fond of hakikat follows a different road altogether. And the Imam gives an example in the Farman. He says, like Jesus, Pir Sadruddin, Nasir Khosrow, Pir Shamsh, and Maulana Rumi did in the days gone by. Such is a course is most difficult for the ignorant. Are you reflecting on this? In other words, if we were to translate in a sense into some practical means, hakikat means we want to discover and know and understand the truth that Holy Prophet Jesus, Holy Pir Sadruddin, Pir Nasir Khosrow, Pir Shamsh, Maulana Rumi, what did they all talk about? That the Imam is to mention their names. What truth did they talk about? So in one sense, here comes the connection, just as one example, with ginans and qasidas. And that is, when we are reciting holy ginans in Jamaat Khana, these are not just psalms. This is not just devotion. Of course it is. And of course it is music. But the content of it is knowledge that comes from the supra-sensible world. That is what is in common with all of these. So for example, if you read the works of Pir Nasir Khosrow, what did Nasir Khosrow say? If you look at some of his spiritual writings like the Wajjuddin and others, you will find that we are able to bridge the teachings, the esoteric understanding, the hakikat that Nasser Khosrow spoke about to people during his time, and for example, what Pir Sadaddin taught in the Ginan. There is an amazing reconciliation. There is an amazing harmony. Why? Because they were beings at the level of the Hakikat. And that is what they brought the Jamaat of the time into the path of Hakikat. Therefore, the Imam speaks here about the notion of Hakikat in this particular manner. One more thing, the Imam also says, for those of you who have the Hakikat as their aim, now remember this, aim, the Imam said aim. Are you aiming at the Hakikat? When you think about our holy faith, when you think about Ismaili Satpant Dharam, are you aiming at the Hakikat? Or are you stuck somewhere else? So I say to you, by all means, acquire knowledge from any source. That's our duty and responsibility. But ask yourself, is this the Hakikat of the Ismaili Tariqah? Other Tariqahs have their own Hakikat, and that's fine. We have no qualms about that. That's theirs. What about ours? And on top of that, we must be extremely careful today, because people have a tendency to crisscross. When they don't find something within our own tariqah, they assume it's missing. And therefore you go elsewhere and you try to import that inside. The answer is no. And let me tell you why. If it is indeed the Holy Imam who says it is he who guides the Jamaat into the Batin and the discovery of the Hakikat, are you then saying that the Imam is not giving you what is required into the path we are following, that makes you want to go elsewhere and basically fish what is elsewhere and bring it here inside our own pond? Is it even logical to think that you want to go outside the tariqah and ask other people to define who we are and what we should be doing and what we should be practicing? Because trust me, I've been to many presentations of people when they speak about matters related to spirituality, and they have a great interest in wanting to define what we should do and tell us in our tariqah what we should do and not do. That is the blessing that we have from the Imam to tell us, not any third party outside. It doesn't mean we cannot learn from outside. We should, but have a filter. Have a filter that you take in to know that that is indeed for our tariqah and something else is not. Especially matters related to the soul and our enlightenment and salvation. So our beloved Imam continues and says that for those of you who have the hakikat as their aim, inshallah, my farman will do a lot of good. Do you see how the Imam ties this up? If your aim is the hakikat, our beloved Imam says, my farman will do a lot of good. Hakikat, farman, equation, equal. They will be able to take in, the Imam is talking about those who have the aim for hakikat, they will be able to take in what I have said. But with those who are weak from within, my farmans may create uncertainty and doubt. I know this would happen because their faith in the hakikat is not strong. I understand each and every mind. Those who are steeped in the Shariat will never respond to my farman, unquote. Now there are many other things that our beloved Imam has said. When I take up this topic in greater detail about the Shariat, Tariqat, Hakikat, and of course the Marifat, and Marifat being the ultimate stage of spiritual enlightenment given by the Holy Imam, it is the stage of divine oneness. We'll come to that in some future lecture. But the point I want to make here, so that you can remember this, hopefully in the most profound and in the most terse and deep manner. What is Hakikat? Hakikat is intoxication for the Imam. Let me repeat this. When a believer, a murid, is intoxicated and is in search of his Imam, meaning he is in a part of that spiritual search, that intoxication is Hakikat. Any deviation from there, it's a different path. When you are intoxicated with Mawla, when you are intoxicated, there is that love, there is that devotion, there is that want of knowledge and understanding. Through this love and intoxication, that is Hakikat. That's the whole purpose. That's the whole purpose. Now, having said that as a backdrop, as a background, let us address very profoundly, if it is possible within the time that I have, the notion of divine presence. And of course, we will link it to intellectual illumination and to that spiritual enlightenment. So what do we mean by divine presence? So first, I would like you, in a very broad perspective, to seek to understand what is it we mean by divine presence. Well, look, put it in very simple language, is to ask ourselves that fundamental question: is he who is the source of creation, creator, the sustainer, the maintainer of all beings, he who always was, is now, always will be, and he who is, according to the Quran, the Lord of the heavens and the earth, and he who humankind and human beings through various means and paths of search have always asked the question, where is that being? Who is that being? Link that to my presentation to mean divine presence. What is that? Over time, it took millions and millions of years. That being, that human being have sought for millennia, he has never been separated or absent from his creation. Never. It's always been there. The question was humanity ready to know and understand him? Now, it's a long theological rendering and history about that. But in a few short sentences, in our tariqah, that being, call him Allah, call him God. People sometimes don't like the word God, so they say the universe, but call him whatever you want. That being has always been present and manifest into the world. He's never been absent. Now there are those, remember what I said, who are at a different level of interpretation. They may think that, oh, that can't be. That's fine for them. But that is not the case. And I shall give you hadiths of the Holy Prophet that tells you that. But going back from that beginning of time, when this world was brought into existence, that very being from whom the source of creation is, that being himself, Allah Almighty, he himself also made himself present. After all, does it not say in the scripture, in the book, he is the Lord of the heavens and the earth? Look at it any way you want, but he's also the Lord of the earth. Now, I know the heavens is too profound for us to go there and speak about it. So let's stick to earth, where we exist right now. Just as billions and billions of years ago, when these souls existed into an ocean of the soul known as ALWAAZ, meaning the world of souls. The word arwah is plural of the word ruh, meaning spirit or souls. God himself, Allah himself, meaning the nur of the Imam itself, dwelled into this ocean with all these souls. Was there. If I forget, do not ask me to give you the reference of what I'm saying. I'm coming to that. I think I will mention it as we move along. What is the reference? I'm saying to you, the nur of the Imam was present in this ocean of souls, and it dwelled among these souls in that ocean. And something happened which caused the process of creation to begin. And when that process of creation began, and when it culminated into the physical dimension and realm, all the souls that were meant to come into the physical world came into the physical world and took a physical form. And you remember the forms that Rumi mentions, that the Imam also mentioned in his Farman. That he was a stone, and then a plant, and then a worm, and then an animal, and then it drove to a human being, and so on. These are the forms. Now, what happened then? The Creator himself, the Lord himself, also took similar forms. And to give you one example, many years ago, in the 1940, I think it was 1945, people went to our beloved Imam Sultan alayhi salam, and they said to the Imam, they said, Khudawand, you know, we are reciting our dua, and remember the dua at that time was very different than the dua that we recite today. And in the dua that we recited before, we also mention the nur that took all these different forms. And one of the form in which the nur manifested itself, meaning God manifested itself into that form, was that of a fish. And remember, in the notion of the theory of evolution, the fish plays a very important role in terms of a species in the beginning of the evolution of the various evolutionary forms. And one day, of course, if you are interested, we should explore both the Ginan and the Quran and other Ismaili literature in terms of what are these evolutionary forms. But guess what? People went to the Imam and they say to the Imam that in our dua we have this word fish, and that should be kind of remove the drop. I'm just paraphrasing. I don't have the details of that event in front. I have it, but I don't have it in front of me. Someday I'll bring it out. And the Imam explained to them, and please understand this clearly, because remember, we are speaking about divine presence, how the divine makes himself present and manifest. So the Imam explained to this group of people and said to them, do you know when there was nothing that was existing in this world, and the only life form in this world was fish? The Imam says to them, God stood witness as a fish. So the Imam says, don't delude yourself. This is not an illusion or a mythology. Mythology in that wrong sense, meaning it's a myth or a fiction. It's not a myth. It's not a fiction. It's a reality. God manifested himself in the form of a fish. And the Imam testified to that. And that was not, of course, the only form. Whatever form ever came into this creation, God also took that form. So, there came the time of the last prophet of God when he was entrusted to tell humanity what now, because this is the final message. And that's why, first of all, there is this hadith that makes that connection, which I have quoted before, and that hadith says, this is hadith al-Qudusi, O Muhammad, if not for thy sake, we would not have created this world. I've explained it before, so I won't do it now. If not for thy sake, we would not have created this world. This means, the hadith says, that all was created and came into existence for his sake, meaning Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam's sake. And then it is said in another place, if there were no Ali, we would not have created the Muhammad. So, it is evident from these hadiths who and what is the source of creation. It is Maulana Ali, the Noor of Allah, the Noor of Imamah. And the source, the media through which this creation took place, was the Noor of the Holy Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, which came from the Noor of Hazrat Ali, as you have heard from this hadith. Now, having said that, now remember, what are we speaking about here? Creation, right? Because the hadith says, had it not been for you, Muhammad, we would not have brought creation into existence. But what was the purpose of this creation? And this answer that is in the Ismaili esoteric hakikat, given to us by the holy peers. And in this case, Holy Pir Shabuddin Shah alayhi salam, during the time of our beloved 47th Imam, Imam Aga Ali Shah Maba, what does Holy Pir says? By the authority of the Imam. The Holy Pir says, giving an explanation, he says, the purpose of creation. Now go back to the hadith, okay? Very important. Because the hadith say, had it not been for your sake, Muhammad, I would not have brought creation into existence. But had it not been for Ali, I would not have created you. So the Holy Pir now joins the two things together and he says, now understand. Now understand. The purpose of the creation of the world was to make known that manifestation of divine beauty and perfection. Remember these words, okay? Because if we manage to get that far tonight, you will see the connection. The purpose of the creation of the world was to make known the manifestation of the divine beauty and perfection, who is in possession of all his attributes. Are you following me? what the Holy Pir is saying? The whole purpose of this creation eventually was to let the world, the creation, know who is this being whom we are speaking about. God, Allah, the possessor of the Nur itself. He said that being is the purpose for which this creation came into existence. It was to make known this manifestation. Remember the word manifestation. I'm coming to it. I'm giving you the link in a very systematic way, I hope. This manifestation, meaning he was not hidden. He was always there. But now he's made manifest. He's made known. And that manifestation, that being, he is in possession of this divine beauty and perfection, which is only Allah's, and who is in possession of all his attributes. So all the attributes you can think of about Allah Almighty, this being possesses all these attributes. So I hope you're connecting the dots, okay? That's important. And then the Pir is asking, what is he asking? Where is the eye to see and understand this, following the path of reason? Do you see here? Where is the eye to see and to understand this, following the path of reason? And then the Holy Pir goes on. I won't dwell too much because I've explained it in one of my earlier lectures. But the Holy Pir says, it's plainly stated in the Quran that if the Holy Prophet would not have openly professed the walayat of Hazrat Maulana Murtaza Ali alayhi salam, our beloved Imam, then, like the Quran says, and we say this part in our dua, that, O Prophet, bring to humanity the message that was entrusted. Bring to humanity, O Prophet, bring to humanity the message that we entrusted to thee. And if thou dost not deliver it, thou wilt not fulfill thy mission. Then listen to this. Here our holy Pirs, by the authority of the Imam, brings us this knowledge. And the Holy Pir says, thus, now going back to creation, okay? Going back to creation. Thus the Holy Pir says, the creation of the world. Imagine this. The creation of the world. The sending of the prophets. The revelations of the sacred books. All of these were intended in order that humanity could know him. Humanity could know him. About whom? About whom we have spoken through every prophet, and who became manifest at the time of Muhammad. Please say Sallallahu. So what was the purpose of creation? Put very simply, all the prophets who came, the creation came, all the divine books that came, about whom was spoken by all the prophets, meaning the presence of the Nur with all the prophets. And I think I have mentioned to you in one of my lectures, but in case for those who are here today and saying that, that the presence with all the prophet, meaning the manifestation of that Nur, but not revealed openly. That is, with Prophet Adam, referring to this cycle, the Imam was Shish, in other words, Set. With Noah, it was Maulana Shem. With Abraham, it was Maulana Ismail. With Moses, it was Maulana Harun. With Prophet Jesus, it was Maulana Malikus Salam or Shimuna Safa. And with Holy Prophet Muhammad, it was Maulana Murtaza Ali. And it is in reference to Maulana Ali that everything that I've said to you, that the Pir is teaching us, is in reference to. So the Nur has always been there, but it became manifest. It was time for humanity to know. Now, what was the point of all of this? I've said this thing to you before in a different context and way. The point is here, I want you, if I may request you, that you focus in your mind and in your thinking, divine presence. The presence of the Nur. He whom we call the one who is the Lord, sustainer, maintainer, creator, he who is to whom inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un, he from whom we have come, to whom we will return, him, that Lord in which the Holy Quran says that he is the Lord of the heaven, he is the light of the heavens and the earth, he is the Lord to whom the heavens and the earth belong, and so on. That manifestation is Hazrat Maulana Murtaza Ali alayhi salam. So now, if you are following this trend of logic and reasoning, because it is there in plain words, it means the Nur of Allah has never been hidden into some curtain behind just because some people are unable to reason its existence even into this world. And let me give you one more cue before I proceed. If Maula Ali was made manifest by the Holy Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam as ordained in the Quran, that make known to humanity this manifestation, what was the purpose? But before I get into that one, it is said, and you have read these verses in the Quran. Why did Allah made the form of Adam out of clay? And why did Allah manifest himself into that form? Have you thought of this? And yet people will deny that God has no hand, God has no eyes, he has no ears, he has no tongue. And yet it is evident in front of us. They think in their limited way of looking at things that this is blasphemous. It is not. It is the esoteric. It is the marifat. So whoever thinks that, they are thinking it in their own limited way. And we are not there to convince them otherwise. That is up to them. But let not anyone steal our esoteric in the excuse of their exoteric. That's not happening. It has never happened. And neither is today the time to think that we can just let go because some people are timid about it. I'm not saying to you go out there and debate the esoteric. No one has the authority to do that. We are simply discussing matters related to our inner meaning and our inner essence, the esoteric. And having said that, it doesn't mean we have the right to go out there and create polemics and arguments and discussions. We don't. No one has been given that authority. So we need to understand from our inner perspective what we mean. So if Maulana Ali was made manifest, meaning he was declared to say, he is the one, he is the one who is the Nur. He is the one. And that was the message the Holy Prophet brought, and so forth. So now, where does that take us? Now remember, we are speaking about divine presence. Will you not say, when Maulana Ali became manifest and the Holy Prophet said so many beautiful things about Maulana Ali, that today we also study and know, he was the Nur manifest. He was present. He was available for people to see in the Zahir. But he is also the Batin. and he is also the awwal, the first, and he is also the akhir, the last. So Mawla Ali, the Imam, he is the first, the last, the hidden and the manifest, the zahir and the batin. So why did he come on earth? Why this creation took place? So one part of his was to make humanity know who he is. Now listen to this farman. Imam Sultan Muhammad Shah alayhi salam in Zanzibar on July 30th, 1899 says, and I quote, "You will benefit if you obey the farmans of the Imam of the time. I have come here for your upliftment and salvation of your souls." Shall I say that again? I have come here for your upliftment and the salvation of your souls. So make the connection. The Imam is come here? Yes. Why? Everything our beloved Imam is doing for the Jamaat is for the salvation of our soul. Is the Imam not a divine presence? Who will deny and manifest? The very Noor that is the source of everything in the cosmos and beyond and before and after. That very Noor is with us in the manifestation of the Holy Imam as the 49th Imam, Maulana Shah Karim al-Husseini, please say salwa. Therefore, when the Imam says, "I have come here for the salvation of your soul," does that not say something to you about divine presence? And of course, the Jamaat knows that this is not anything new. You know that. Then the Imam continues and says, "As the captain and the crew who steer the ship in the ocean are aware of the direction and whereabouts of the stones, the hillocks, sands, and also know where the water is deep, where the passage is clear, and in which way they can reach the destination safely," our beloved Imam says, in the same way, Imam knows all about the path which leads one to salvation. If indeed that is what it is, and it is that Imam knows all about the path that leads to salvation. So here, I'm just adding this part, but we'll go into it perhaps later. If the Imam has come here for our salvation and upliftment, and Imam knows all about the path of salvation, to whom have you entrusted your soul for salvation? To whom? I want to be very specific with you. Don't go wandering here and there thinking salvation lies out there. In the case of our tariqah, in the case of our interpretation, in the case of our meaning of that, the Imam says, "I am the one, I know all about it." So if we, the Mu'mins, have entrusted our soul into the holy and divine hand of the Imam, then that's where it belongs. We have entrusted our soul to him. And in that context, what does the Imam say to us? You remember? The Imam speaks about his Noor indicating to us where in which direction to turn. Now, hold these thoughts in your mind, because I'm coming back to it, is related to the notion of salvation and farman. But I want to continue here giving you more evidence about the notion of divine presence and the notion of this manifestation. In one place, which doesn't really matter, but I just say that in one particular place, when there was a meeting to discuss many aspects of the practice of our faith, the people involved in discussing these matters in the presence of the Holy Imam, and I'm speaking about our beloved present Imam, they asked Mullah Bapa, they said, Khudavand, how do we explain the meaning of Imamat to the Jamaat? And according to the documentation that exists, the reply our beloved Imam gave was to say, tell the Jamaat that the Imam is the Mazhar of Allah. Amazing understanding that our beloved Imam is giving us. Tell the Jamaat, the Imam is the Mazhar of Allah. What does that mean? And the Imam pointed to a source also. And that source is the writings of Nasiruddin Tusi, which I'll have hopefully time to mention something. But he was a 13th century Ismaili philosopher, scientist, mathematician, astronomer, biologist, architect. He was a polymath. Now, in the interest of time, let me just jump straight into the meaning. What is the meaning of Mazhar? Mazhar, according to this definition, please listen carefully. Mazhar means manifestation, is used in a mystical sense of a human being symbolizing or occupying the same place in the visible world as its prototype occupies in the sphere of higher realities. Look, to put it simply, whatever you think was invisible in the sphere of higher reality, when that invisible being becomes visible in the sphere of physical reality, he is called Mazhar. So the Imam say, well, tell the Jamaat the Imam is the Mazhar of Allah. To that, I want to give you an example, because it is in the same book of Nasiruddin Tusi. This is the older translation. Nasiruddin Tusi gives an example of someone during the time of the Holy Prophet and during the time of Hazrat Ali. Look what he says. And I'm quoting from the Tasawurat. He says, Abdullah ibn Abbas says, no woman could give birth to a man like Ali ibn Abi Talib. Verily, by God, I saw him in the battle of Camel, without armor, riding between the arrayed armies of the warriors, saying. So now he's quoting Hazrat Ali. He says, no woman could give birth to a man like Ali ibn Abi Talib. Verily, by God, I saw him in the battle of Camel, without armor, riding between the arrayed armies of the warriors and saying, I am the face of God, Wajullah, who has been appointed by him. I am the side of God, pointing towards him, towards which you have been instructed to turn. Whether one is praying for forgiveness or repenting his sins. I am the Lord of the great throne, Arshi Azam, and the mystery of God. I am the face of God, and his hand, and his side, of which God says, thou have sinned with regards to it. Who is he who repents? I accept his repentance. Who prays for forgiveness? I may forgive him. Unquote. So this is the rendering of Abdullah ibn Abbas during the time of Hazrat Ali to say, I saw him and I heard him say these things. Is this not divine presence? I ask you. Now, this is still in that broad realm, in the broad sense. Let us go a little further. Now remember this word, mazhar, manifestation. I hope that because I'm not going very much into added explanation, but simply to say that which other people call invisible in the suprasensible realm or in heaven or wherever else, it's not invisible. It is visible. It is the manifestation. It is the mazhar. And it is very clear because this definition says, because I want to make this connection, what does this definition say again? It says it's used in a mystical sense of a human being, symbolizing or occupying the same place in the visible world as its prototype occupies in the sphere of higher reality. The thing to underline here is to say is used in a mystical sense of a human being. Now look, our beloved Imam Mustansir Billah alayhi salam says, and I'm just taking whatever I can in terms of connecting to this main point. Our beloved Imam says, O believers, Maulana Shah Mustansir Billah says, so I'm quoting to you. The Imam says, the true believer is the one who has no malice in his heart, which is pure. Then listen to this. Whoever wants to attain my didar in this world and the hereafter. So he's not leaving anything aside, right? He's saying, my didar in this world and the hereafter, must keep himself away from every defect, opposition, and evil act. And according to how far he achieves purification of his heart and is able to see his creator in this world, so he will also see him in the hereafter. So this is one part of it, right? He will also be able to see him in the hereafter. So think about this particular aspect. What is the Imam saying? First of all, purification of the heart. You will not be able to see this reality, this haqiqah, without having achieved purification of your heart. So our beloved Imam said, and according to how far he achieves purification of his heart and is able to see, to be able to see his creator in this world. I'm talking about divine presence, right? Are you able to see your creator in this world? This is no secret, or this is no unknown to our Jamaat in our tariqah. But I'm making the point. So the Imam say he will also see him in the hereafter. So if you see him here, then you will see him in the hereafter. Now listen to this. This is the conclusion part of this. Our beloved Imam says, it is obligatory and necessary for the true believer to recognize his creator who is manifest in this world in the form of a human being and to see him here in order to see him also in the hereafter. So if you have this desire, this wish that you say, I will see my creator in the hereafter, as many faiths and many people say, that they will see God in the hereafter. They will see the creator in the hereafter. Our beloved Imam said, see him in this world. See him in this world. So you can see him there also. The point is that holy presence, that divine presence is here into this world. Now, let me add perhaps a little more. And then we come to the individual aspect. This is still the whole collective aspect, if you like. So, this hadith is this explanation by the Holy Imam exists in many many Shia pieces of literature, but this is the one given from our holy peers. And what does he say? It's an example of our beloved fifth Imam, Imam Jafar Sadiq alayhi salam. Okay? And what does the Imam says? Imam Jafar Sadiq alayhi salam once replied to a man who asked him whether it is true that at the day of resurrection, God will become visible to all. I hope you understand the question. A person is asking Imam Jafar Sadiq alayhi salam, is it true that on the day of Qiyamah, on that day of Mahadan, on the day of resurrection, that God will become visible to all? Visible means to be able to see him, right? What did the Imam reply? The holy Imam replied, yes, said he. The Imam says, he is visible even before that day. He is visible to his slaves from the day when he asked them, am I not your Lord? Now let me stop for a second here. So you can see the beloved Imam Jafar Sadiq alayhi salam says, he is visible to his slaves, meaning to whom? To the Mu'mins, to the Murids. He is visible even before that day. He is visible to his slaves from the day when he asked them, am I not your Lord? Now what does that mean? Am I not your Lord? In the Quran, this whole verse exists whereby God asks the soul the same question. Allah asks the souls, am I not your Lord? Alastu bi rabbikum. So this concept that God is asking all the created souls then, am I not your Lord? Remember I mentioned to you in this ALWAAZ, Allah dwelled among the souls. It is then that Allah asks all these souls, am I not your Lord? Alastu bi rabbikum. And then the Imam replies, he says that he is visible to his slaves from the day when he asked them, am I not your Lord? Then the Imam continued and says, now listen to this. True believers saw him even in this world. That means divine presence. True believers even saw him in this world. And then what happens? The holy Imam asks this person, do not you see him? Do not you see him? The man who asked the question then replied, he says, O my Lord, saying it to the Imam, O my Lord, I see thee. And then he says, give me permission to tell this to others on thy authority. And Imam Jafar Sadiq alayhi salam, our beloved fifth Imam, replies and says, do not tell this to anybody, because people are stupid and ignorant. They shall disbelieve you regarding this as impiety. Now I would like to tell you, when the Imam says, that people are stupid and ignorant, I'm linking this notion of ignorance to what Imam Sultan Muhammad Shah alayhi salam said, our beloved 48 Imam, to those who are ignorant of the hakikat, they cannot understand it because they don't want the hakikat. And here the Imam say, these are the ignorant, who are unable to understand. And therefore, the Imam say, they shall disbelieve you regarding this as impiety. The people will say to you, this is kufra, this is impiety. So the Imam said, don't go saying this to people, because they'll disbelieve you. No wonder that sometimes people have this timidity and with what goes around it. So now, the Imam continues and says, seeing with one's heart, remember what Imam Muslim Sribila said, in accordance to how you purify your heart. So here Imam Jafar Sadiq says also, seeing with one's heart is different from seeing with one's eyes. No. So now the Holy Pir says, no, brother, that this matter was always kept hidden from the unreliable people, and only a few trusted ones were admitted to learn it. And Pir Shabuddin Shah says, and if one who is in possession of the truth, ahli hakikat. You see what the word hakikat is linked to? This truth, this notion of the presence of the divine and who is he. And if one who is in possession of the truth, this ahli hakikat, were found somewhere, people would abuse him or ridicule him. This is why we said above that the ears of people had become deaf and the tongues of persuasion had become silent. So we can, at some time later, expand on this. But I hope you have followed my logic from the beginning about the notion of hakikat and how this hakikat was linked to the divine manifestation and divine presence here in this world, who is none else but the living present Imam, the 49th Imam, the bearer of this noor. That is, Mola Bapa's presence is Allah's presence. Don't have any delusions about it. Don't make any mistake about it. And frankly, don't let people convince you otherwise unless they have an argument that comes from the hakikat, from the Imam and the Pir to say otherwise. Because trust me, there is no greater truth than this one. And that is, anyone who denies this hakikat, then they are denying the whole absolute reality and manifestation. Now, speaking about divine presence, is this presence also with the Mu'mins? Yes. Look, Imam Mustan Sirbila says, we can continue for a long time with this, but simply to bring this thing to some level of conclusion before we jump to the next part, to say that the real believer is one who says, sorry, I'll repeat this. The real believer is one who always feels that the all-forgiving Lord is present before him and sees him. And that he is just here, near to him, than his own self. So, think about this. This is the Imam teaching the believer. He says the real believer is the one who always feels that the all-forgiving Lord is present before him and sees him. And sees him. Do you see him? Imam Jafar Sadiq alayhi salam asked that person, do you not see him? So, this is for the real believer. And that he is just here. So when you think about yourself, at any time of the day or the night, where is my Imam? Where is Mola Bapa now? He's right here. See him. He is right here. Right here. I see him. And our Imam basically says the true believer is the one who always feels that the all-forgiving Lord is present before him and sees him, and that he is just here, near to him, near to his own self. This is divine presence. This is divine presence. The Imam has made no secret of it. He has said, I am with my Jamaat every minute, every hour, every day, every season. I'm combining a couple of formats. Right? Can't deny that. Can't deny that. So this notion of divine presence is a reality. It is a fact. It is not a fade, something that exists in the clouds. In our tariqah, the whole notion of divine presence is like the air that you breathe. You may not be able to see, like you don't see the air, but you feel it, and you know without it you will have no existence. But you can see the Imam more than the air. And you can feel him too, because he feels us. So the notion of divine presence is not something we need just to philosophize about it. It's an absolute reality of divine origin. And we must accept the notion of this reality because it is what enables us and guides us into the things that we do. Now, the notion of divine presence related to intellectual illumination, of course, they are connected, and as I said earlier on, with spiritual elevation. I'm going to have to make it a part 2 next week, next Tuesday, because I haven't finished yet, but I don't want to get into that subject for another hour and a half or 2, which I suspect this is what it will take. So if I have your permission, I would like to continue with it next Tuesday as part 2 of this topic. I've spoken sufficiently about divine presence. Now I want to speak about intellectual illumination and spiritual elevation. But before we come to the conclusion to this part, I do want to add one more aspect of this topic, which is in fact what prompted me this whole idea to begin with. And I was discussing the idea with my wife, Nusrat, a few days back. And she's the one who came up with this framework to say, why don't you make it a bigger framework where you can include all these other notions? And thank God for her that I did it. And, this is where it has led to. But now I want to say something in continuation of this notion of divine presence. So in simple terms, you already know what I've said, that the Nur of Allah, the manifestation, Hazrat Ali, all our beloved Imams, Mawlana Bapa himself is present right in front of us. There is no illusion to that. There is no denial to that. That is our faith. That is our hakikat. That is our hakikat. And the fact that Imam comes to the Jamaat and gives the Jamaat holy didar, and we are blessed with those didar, is itself the proof of that manifestation. Now, at the practical level, what can we say? Well, the first thing I would like to say, is at the practical level, look at our Ismaili greeting. Have you ever thought of it? What do we mean by this Ismaili greeting? We say, Ya Ali Madad. And the reply given sometime is Mawla Ali Madad or Maulana Ali Madad. Have you ever taken 30 seconds and think about this to say, oh my goodness, what is this Ya Ali Madad? Why can't we say anything else beside Ya Ali Madad? Many people do, hi and bye, and they have other forms of greeting. And of course, now you have to kind of click your elbow because you can't touch the hand. But that doesn't matter. The point is, Ya Ali Madad. Translate that into practice. Ya Ali Madad. You are taking the name of whom? Ya Ali. Do you know what mystic says? Poet says? You can take gallons and gallons and gallons of rose water, clean your mouth with it, you would still not qualify to utter this holy name. The name of Ya Ali, which is the name also of the Imam of the time. So we are saying, Ya Ali Madad. What are we saying? May Mawla Ali help you. May the help of Mawla Ali be with you. And the reply is given. What reply is that? Mawla Ali Madad. It's the same, but in reverse. That with you too, with you also, may the help of Mawla Ali be with you. Maulana Ali Madad. But the help of Mawla, the Lord, Ali, be with you. So what is this help? Did you know that Ali, I'm not just talking about the name, we are talking about Hazrat Ali, and we are talking about the Imam. We are saying Mawla Ali is the manifestation of Allah's power. I repeat this. Mawla Ali. Ali is the manifestation of Allah's power. We are greeting each other by saying, may Allah's power, who is Mawla Ali, be with you. And the same reply in reverse is given. Don't take this for granted. Do you think simply saying it by mouth cuts it? This is not like, hello, how are you? No, it's not. There is a spiritual element integrated with the notion of Yali Madad. Remember what our beloved Imam said before? The true believer is the one who feels and knows that his Lord, his Creator, is present in front of him, that he sees him, he feels him, he acknowledges his presence. It's like someone saying to you, you see, Mawla Bapa is right here. May he be the help to you, Ya Ali Madad. Do we not say that in our dua? Tawassalu indal masai bi maulakumil. At the time of difficulty, seek the help of the living Imam. This is our greeting. And in this greeting is hidden the mystery and power and miraculous manifestation of Mawla Ali alayhi salam. And what is that? That is codified in the tasbih of prayer of Nabi Ali. And what is the tasbih? I think all of you perhaps know it. Nabi Aliyan Mazhar al-Ajaib tajidahu awnan laka fin nawaib kullu khamin wa gamin sayanjali bivilaytika ya Ali, ya Ali, ya Ali. Nabi Aliyan, cry out, cry aloud to Ali. Nabi Aliyan, cry aloud to Ali. Mazhar al-Ajaib. Mazhar al-Ajaib. Who is the epiphanic source of wonders? Mawla Ali is the epiphanic source of wonders. The word epiphanic in one way means manifestation. It means the source from which this power, radiance, authority, and transformation emanates. That Mawla Ali is the epiphanic source of wonders. Tajidahu awnan. You surely shall find him. Awnan laka fin nawahib. You shall find him helping you in your troubles. Kullu hamin wa gamin sayanja Ali. All grief and anxiety will disappear. All grief and anxiety will disappear. Bivalaitika, by your power and authority. Ya Ali, Ya Ali, Ya Ali. O Ali, O Ali, O Ali. So if I read you the translation incomplete, basically, cry aloud to Ali, who is the epiphanic source of wonders, you surely shall find him helping in your troubles. All grief and anxiety will disappear by your power and authority, O Ali, O Ali, O Ali. And this is how we translate when we say, Ya Ali Madad. This is our greeting. This is our greeting. Our greeting, imagine this, imagine this. When you look at the book of Revelation, like the Quran, it begins with the name of Ali. The Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, the Bay of the Bismillah, the B of the Bismillah is actually Mawla Ali. I think we have perhaps seen this in places. I may have an opportunity at some point to come back to make some connection with this. But simply to say, the whole Quran begins with Ali and ends with Ali. Mawla Ali says, I am the mystery of Alif Lam Mim. Now we will have to ask some of the scholars of Quranic learning, like Professor Andani. I believe he has done amazing. I haven't had an opportunity to dialogue with him, but certainly the things that he has brought forth is absolutely amazing, nothing short of amazing. And I think that they constitute a very important foundation for our mystical and esoteric understanding of our faith. And we should be grateful for the thousands and thousands of hours a scholar like him who's been able to bring forward matters related to our tariqah in a very logical, comprehensible way. So it will be nice to make that connection. So I would like, in the interest of time, I think it is just past 10 o'clock, because I know there are many people in the East Coast, for them and their ibadat and so on. They have in fact asked me, they said, can you make the presentation earlier? And I said, I don't know, because we started this with in the West Coast, and then people in the East are joining. So if you have any feedback about starting earlier, please send us a message, particularly starting at 5 o'clock, 5:30 in the West Coast, and then maybe 6 at the latest. And then for the people in the East Coast, it will be maybe 8:30, 9 o'clock, and it will hopefully still be okay if we just have the session for 2 hours. So we'd like your feedback, and based on that feedback, we will hopefully see if we can make the change of time, or perhaps a little later on. So that would be amazing if you can please let us know. And I'm open for some few questions at this point in time. And just for your information, next week I will continue with the notion of intellectual illumination and spiritual elevation. It will be a continuation of this notion of divine presence, but ensuring that the conclusion of this session this evening to absolutely make sure, never ever to doubt, that if you cannot see the Imam, remember, Mola Bapa is seeing us, and not just a question of seeing. It is said in the Holy Pandiyati Javan Mardi, the Imam says, I am with the true believer, and I am aware of every single thought to the minutest degree of information. Whether your thought is good, bad, or ugly, I am aware of it. And whatever actions that you are doing, remember, our behavior, our actions, our ethics, it is right there in front of him. We are doing it on his face because he's present before us. It's the holy and divine presence of Mola Bapa in front of us that protects us, that guides us, that shows us the right path, the Sirat al-Mustaqim. Never ever doubt. This is our faith. This is our hakikat. This is our conviction. Our faith is a faith of conviction, not of convenience, Mawla said. Let us pray that Mawla strengthens our conviction every breath, every second of our existence. Any question, please?
There was somebody saying, if our aim is to be one with him in this world, what happens to the people who don't live long enough? They come here for a very short time.
I'm sorry, please say that again. Sorry, I was distracted.
There was a question in the chat.
Yes.
If our aim is to become one with him,
yes.
What happens to the people who were here for a very short time, like they couldn't achieve that aim?
Now, when you say people, any qualifications to say what you mean by people?
I think the connotation was it's the Ismailis.
Okay. Well, look, as I've been trying in all my presentations, including today, including the Farman that I have read, that Mola Bapa says to us, I have come here for the salvation of your soul and your spiritual upliftment. So if you are here if you have been here for a very short time, physically speaking, that is all that you were here for. And that is a reminder to all of us. We are here. When I speak next week, we are here for the purpose of our salvation. Because this is not our permanent work. We are here in transition. We are here in transition. So this world is a bridge to the next for us. So we rely, look at this, we rely on our beloved Imam. We rely on his grace. We rely on his mercy. We rely on Mola Bapa's grace. So I say to you, follow what Mola Bapa says. If you care about your salvation and your hereafter and whatever lifetime you have, be strict about it. You should be strict to yourself and say, you know what? I'm not going to eat from anybody else's buffet out there. I'm only speaking about the soul, not Chinese or Italian food, okay? I'm saying eat spiritually from the buffet of the Imam. Eat the food the Imam is giving us for your soul. That is the food that will lead you to salvation. So worry not how short your life is, except have you fulfilled your obligation, your dasam, your dua, following the farmans of the Imam, and your ibadat if you have made commitment. Next question.
Basically, it's just all the people in the East want you earlier. The people in the West want you to keep your time because they don't want to miss out on their dua time. And so we're going to have to, rethink this on how to please both worlds.
Yes, we normally start at 8 o'clock here on the West Coast. And I know it's a difficult decision. There is no harm for people, if they want to attend, to maybe consider saying their dua a little earlier to accommodate the people in the East Coast. For the purposes of the next session, I would say let us keep our time. Let us keep our time at 8 o'clock for now until we review the feedback, and then watch out for the invitation for next week. We'll try to send it earlier, and then watch out for the time. That's all I can say for now. And please, if you send us your feedback, we'll be happy to do that.
Okay, I think we can call it a night. There was just one follow-up to what you were explaining earlier. It was just a comment. What happens if somebody dies at the age of 2?
Yes. The thing is this. As far as the soul is concerned, the age has no consequence whatsoever. None. Physically, of course, we understand how we seek to relate to the notion of time and age. But here's the thing. Some soul, when they enter this planet, meaning the physical world, they come here for X amount of years. And that is the time predetermined for them to complete their ibadat before they can cross the bridge to eternity and salvation. So if you are here for 60 years, 70 years, 80 years, that is your predetermined time before you came into the physical world. Now, if we see a soul that came in, took up a physical form, a very young age, like in 2 years, and then dies, that's all the soul had to complete. No more than that. Remember, the soul isn't here to stay. It comes here for a purpose and then it has to leave. And that's part of the purpose of spiritual illumination, which I will speak next week. But the purpose is we need to ensure that you don't forget. But we forget. We come here and then we say, aha, I am now home and I want to stay here permanently. Not at all. You are not here permanent. The time will come, you have to exit. And the time comes to exit, you're going to say, oh my God, did I fulfill everything I was supposed to fulfill? What am I taking with me? What am I going to be taking with me? So that is a consideration about about intellectual illumination. But the soul that lives earlier on, age of 2 months, 2 years, even 20 years, that's all they were meant to be into this world. Whatever the excuse of death is an excuse of death. But young age, in many instances, symbolizes just that. That's all that soul was required to do into this world before it crossed to eternal peace in eternity.
So this may be a question for another session. They want to know how they are on the path of salvation. Like, are they, getting there, and what are the indicators?
There is only one absolute, non-negotiable indicator, and that is follow the holy farmans of the Imam, which is the source of salvation, the source of illumination. I will have a lot more to say next week about it, but I want to make sure I'm giving this answer. And in the context of the holy farman of the Imam, first comes your dasant, then your 3 du'as, followed by your prayers and your ibadat, followed by your ethics and your deeds and so on. So that is the whole basis of that.
Okay, I think we have reached an end for tonight. Semin, all yours.
Okay. Yeah. So thank you so much, Dr. Hassam. And I see lots of comments on the chat saying it was very enlightening. Everyone loved it. So, inshallah, we'll continue to get this kind of enlightening from you. Really, really appreciate it, Abdul, Dr. Hassam, for your time. And inshallah, I'm not allowed to give dua, but inshallah, you'll be rewarded plentiful for all this seva. Look forward to way more.
Amen.
Okay, so Yali Madat, everyone.
Mola Madat, everyone. Mola bless you and fulfill all your wishes, spiritually, materially. Mola Bapa keep you happy. Mola Bapa protect you. And may you have light, radiance, illumination in your heart, in your intellect, in your soul. And may Mola Bapa's both hands be upon you, all of you, to protect you and guide you and to keep you safe under the circumstance and always keep you happy and content.
Amen.
Thank you. Mola Bapa bless you with Batuni Nurani Dida. Thank you. Inshallah, see you next week. And please send us your emails so that we have it and making sure that we can communicate and connect with you. Yali Madat, everyone. Mola bless you again. Yali Madat.
Bye.
Yali Madad Nusrat.
Yes, Yali Madad.
Can you add me onto this list of attendees? Like, I got an email through somebody else.
Yeah, it says you're admin, so it's one admin talking to the other admin.
Yes. So I can just put my name as, give you my email, so you can add me onto your list, please.
Yeah, otherwise send it to beautiful2view@msn.com. I had it in the chat.
I'm so sorry, I didn't get it. So can you state, can you give it to me again a little slower?
Yeah, and I'll send it to everybody as well. It's beautiful to view. The 2 is just the number 2.
Okay, I've only got beautiful so far, Nusrat. So beautiful, and then what?
The number 2, beautiful to view.
VIEW?
Yes.
At
msn.com.
I'm sorry. It's a little difficult to hear you, my dear. If you can slow down.
Okay. You got the beautiful with the number 2 view, VIEW @msn.com.
Okay. So beautiful to view is all one word.
Yes.
At msn as in Nancy.com.
Yes.